The first version of Justice League was released in 2017. This is why I'm talking about it before Joker, which was released in 2019. But it's rather the Zack Snyder's cut, released in 2021, which will be discussed in this episode, since it's this version that does justice, pardon the pun, to its director's original vision. I've never seen Joss Whedon's version, and to be honest, I certainly wouldn't have imposed Zack Snyder's version on myself either if I hadn't started this series of video essays. Therefore, I'm not able to compare the two versions, which seems to be the only thing that pretty much every other YouTuber does when producing a video about this movie. Unlike them, I'm in no position to say whether or not Snyder's version is better than Whedon's. On the other hand, what I am able to offer is an unbiased look, a non-comparison, and therefore an honest viewing of Snyder's film as Snyder himself probably wants it to be viewed. That is, in an ideal world where Whedon's version would never have seen the light of day. Because even if, unsurprisingly, Snyder fans swear that the new version is superior to the previous one, that does not mean that the film is good or faithful to the DC universe. Of course, as always, the purpose of this channel is not to list for several minutes the qualities and faults of each film, even if sometimes I simply have no other choice and I allow myself a little humor, but rather to contextualize these films in order to discover what the decisions of each filmmaker reveal about their interests and their era. Welcome to Frank Movie Talks, I'm Frank, and today I'm going to explore the Snyder Cut of Justice League. The Snyder Cut of Justice League is a long and lifeless movie that leaves us indifferent, superior to Batman vs Superman not because it has more qualities, but because it has fewer flaws. It's less racist, less misogynistic, and less narratively disjointed. However, despite what the word cut may lead us to believe, it is so long that even Zack Snyder's most ardent defenders are forced to admit that the 4 hours it spends are unwarranted.
It is 4 hours long. Okay, it's really long.
The film was shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio, split into parts, and Snyder originally wanted to release it in black and white, which he eventually did, a bit like Logan, Mad Max Fury Road, and Parasite, because he feels it's already a cinematic classic. While his fans describe the film as a meditative action movie,
I did all my best to smile till you're
there's not much to meditate on, and even the action scenes don't tell anything and have no impact on the plot. As for example, when at the 26th minute, Steppenwolf comes to get the Amazon's cube and leaves with it a whole 10 minutes later, while nothing that happened during these 10 minutes will change anything for the rest of the movie. For those who haven't seen it, here's a summary. When Superman dies at the end of BVS, he let out a scream. A scream causing the reactivation of 3 cubes, which consequently revealed their location to Darkseid, who couldn't remember where he left them. His son, Steppenwolf, therefore comes to Earth to take back these cubes from the 3 people who are responsible for keeping them: the Amazons, the Atlanteans, and the Man. And it's to thwart his plans that Batman and Wonder Woman create the Justice League.
Yeah, sorry. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It happens.
Using one of the cubes, they bring Superman back to life, and unsurprisingly, Snyder turns him once again into a frustrated bastard before the final fight against Steppenwolf.
I did all my best to smile till your singing eyes and fingers drew me loving.
In addition to being told in slow motion, the plot is continually interrupted by scenes that add nothing to the story, but which, in their defense, are so ridiculous and unnecessary that they fail to make us lose sight of the stakes of the film, as it was the case with BVS. We see, for example, terrorists threatening to detonate a bomb if the authorities do not let them detonate their bomb, sad Icelandic women worshipping a sweater that smells like fish, Aquaman ransacking the environment just after telling a sailor to respect nature, Iris West joining a flight of sausage,
I did all my best to smile till your singing eyes and fingers drew me loving to your eyes.
New Excalibur references,
The future has taken root in the present.
and Batman dreaming once again that Superman has gone bad. That being said, the film takes the time to develop Cyborg. In fact, he's the only character the film develops, which makes Justice League perhaps more enjoyable to watch as a Cyborg origin story, a film in which the other members of the League appear as secondary characters who bear little resemblance to the source material. Despite the fact that Batman is devoid of any character development, the fact remains that he's presented in this film not only as one of the founding members of the Justice League, but the main founder, which annoyed several fans who consider it goes against his usually lonely persona. And yet, in the comics, Batman can always count on Alfred, Gordon, as well as several Robins and Batgirls who continue to help him in one form or another. Batman is a fine strategist who knows that unity is strength. Of course, he himself tends to forget that his loved ones are there for him, and his reputation as a loner allows him to protect them. In the comics, Batman is indeed a founding member of the Justice League. But how he interacts with it is as important as his position within it, if not more. And that's arguably where the film fails to show Batman the way fans appreciate him. Which is to say, as a manipulator who never reveals all his cards, even to his closest allies, and who indirectly controls events while lurking in the darkness of his Batcave, and insisting on maintaining his independence once the group is formed. Because it's precisely that independence, along with his brooding, that makes him shine within the Justice League of the comics. However, in this universe, it's impossible for Batman to stand out from the other members of the Justice League since Snyder transforms all his characters into irresponsible individualists. Snyder indeed adheres to the objectivist philosophy developed by Ayn Rand, which celebrates selfishness and laissez-faire. In other words, capitalism. If in his lifetime and beyond the grave Jonathan Kent insisted that Superman placed no value on his fellow man and his community, here is what Cyborg's father teaches his son.
The question, no, the challenge, won't be doing it. It will be not doing.
Cyborg has the power to literally eradicate poverty, but instead he picks and chooses those he thinks deserve to be helped. The movie doesn't spend a lot of time here, and it doesn't really interact with the rest of the story, but it is another example of how Snyder imposes his worldview onto almost all of his characters. It is a trope of Snyder's films that the villains are faceless monsters with no agency, and that the protagonists fear losing their individual identities and control over themselves. Oh no, can't have unity. This does create a bit of a problem for the story though, because this is a superhero team-up movie. It's a genre entirely based on a group of people coming together and learning the value of teamwork.
Of course, some people praise this cynical approach, claiming that it allows Snyder to produce superhero films that are more realistic than those from Marvel, in the sense that, according to them, the implausibility of superheroes does not come from their fantastic powers, but from their altruistic nature. Yet, the superheroes of Marvel have also stopped saving the widow and the orphan.
Most of our superheroes, for example, don't live with the common man anymore. Rarely do the movies focus on their secret identities. They live in seclusion, famous, with access to amazing resources not shared with the world. And they cause massive deaths in the name of the greater good. 2 films after Ultron, the villain in Civil War is Helmut Zemo, whose backstory is simply that his family was killed in the city at the end of Ultron and blames the Avengers for it. Because it's absolutely the Avengers' fault? Like, Ultron was created by Tony Stark without much input from the government or like a vote or anything, and ended up killing a lot of people. And he should super be in jail for that. Instead, his punishment for causing that is hero's guilt. And while Civil War is all about whether or not the Avengers need to be regulated and punished, Zemo is still written as a villain. And the ultimate question of what to do about Captain Freedom and the Bloat and Metal Chap and the rest, that never actually gets answered. The Civil War never gets resolved because Thanos shows up. Obviously that's justified within the story, but like, the writers made the story up. They chose not to resolve that. Same for the DC Superman, and when Batman gets specifically peeved about Superman's immunity to consequence, the film just introduces a hilarious goblin as a common threat, and the subject is never discussed again. These movies are all hella fun and junk, but they're kinda propaganda too. They're unironically what the films Team America and Starship Troopers were satirizing. An all-American, stars and stripes team sucking down martinis in their fancy base, too rich to care, flying off in advanced vehicles to turn other countries into war zones in the name of stopping terror, with absolutely no oversight and a shocking amount of mistakes and casualties in the process. That's literally both Team America and the Avengers.
What's most disturbing about current superhero movies, whether it's DC or Marvel, isn't that we no longer see them using their powers and resources to save the world, nor that we see the studios turning them into elitist narcissists, but rather that we have been taught to praise this new vision of superheroes, to admire an elite who are not only indifferent to our situation, but who tries to make it worse. As would, for example, a billionaire entrepreneur who paid the founders of a car company to also be granted the title of founder, and who did not invent anything in his life except some kind of underground highway less efficient and more dangerous than tunnels and public transport, an internet network less efficient and more expensive than the average, and presents a dancer in a spandex suit as if it were a functional robot, while offering wrong prediction and actively seeking to flee Earth without worrying about the people he will kill in the process. If people like Elon Musk are compared today to Tony Stark, it's because our heroes were perverted to look like them. And if people like Elon Musk are revered today, it's because endless and increasingly lucrative movie franchises have taught us to revere these perverted heroes. According to Snyder fans, his goal is not to transform our superheroes into ambassadors of Ayn Rand's objectivism, but rather to reveal the dystopian nature of superhero universes. However, if that was the case, then his films would rather be similar to the Boys series, which reveals precisely the similarity of the DC and Marvel universes, as well as all the horror that would result from it if the superheroes were as individualistic and irresponsible as the Avengers and Zack Snyder's Justice League. While Snyder trembles at the thought of losing his individuality within a collective, it's funny to watch him take part in the greatest process of artistic uniformity that Hollywood has ever seen. When the Snyder Cut was released, those who had previously enjoyed Joss Whedon's Justice League enough to add it to their collection rushed to destroy their copy, proving to the rest of the world that they probably never liked the movie, but that they are always ready to defend and celebrate what they only settled for. What these fans wanted was to love a Justice League movie no matter how bad it was and no matter how poorly it satisfied them. No doubt it will be necessary to wait for a third adaptation of Justice League to see these same fans destroy their copy of the Snyder Cut, finally proving that Snyder is just an unwanted growth of Nolan who urges the studios to restart their franchises. Indeed, the same way Batman needed a reboot after he faced off against demigods in Batman and Robin, he once again needs to return to basics after tasteless blockbusters have pushed him into universes where he is not in his place. Batman is tired.
You look tired.
It's time for him to let go of demons and aliens to resume his crusade against urban crime. Once again, thank you for watching. The Snyderverse is a tough time in Batman's filmography, but we're finally through it, waiting to see its consequences on future films. Don't forget to encourage this video by liking it, sharing it, and commenting on it. And above all, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss the conclusion of this retrospective series.